With my colleague Desiree Chauke, who is now, by the way, introducing the Chief Albert Luthuli Memorial Lecture, and the speaker there, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the head of UN Women. That's back on track. Let's take you live to that event.
Mr. Important Mkhize, the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, is also joining us, Professor Nana Poku. And we're also joined by our keynote speaker, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. She's the Under Secretary General of the UN, also the Executive Director for UN Women. We're also joined from the Luthuli Foundation by the family members and the family of the Luthuli family. And we're also joined by members of Council for the University of KwaZulu-Natal, members of the executive management of the university, deans and academics. We're also joined by management and officials from government. We're joined by Ms. Ila Gandhi, welcome, staff from the Luthuli Museum and the university, and the student leadership and alumni and captains of industry, political, business and religious leaders. We're also joined by members of the Broughtville community, and distinguished guests, and all protocols observed. We're also thrilled to welcome webinar attendees from all over the world, also watching from different parts of the African continent through the SABC News platform. Welcome to you all. At a time when leadership and ethical engagement, not only South Africa, but the world continues to be plagued by gender-based violence and the search for African solutions to a pandemic that has beset the world. This address by the Under-Secretary of the UN and Executive Director for UN Women, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, couldn't be more timely. She will address us later on. But for now, let us call upon our first speaker of the day, and that is Professor Nana Poku, who is the Vice Chancellor and Principal for the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor, you may take the mic.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Professor Mkhize. I'm going to be deputizing for the Vice Chancellor today. The Honorable Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Mhlonishwa Mr. Nathi Mthethwa Unyambose, Professor Nana Poku, the Vice Chancellor, who is unable to be with us today, our Honorable Keynote Speaker, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Under Secretary General and Executive Director, UN Women, Chairperson of the Luthuli Museum, Mr. Important Mkhize Kabazela, Chairperson of the Luthuli Foundation, Mr. Mthunzi Luthuli Madlanduna, Dr. Albertina Luthuli and the Luthuli family, members of Council Luthuli Museum, members of Council University of KwaZulu-Natal, members of Executive Management, University of KwaZulu-Natal, officials from government, universities, national and international, staff and students of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, departments of education, Ms. Ella Gandhi, alumni, captains of industry, political, business, and religious leaders, friends of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. It is my privilege to extend warm greetings to you all as we once again commemorate the ideals and achievements of Inkosi Mvumbi Luthuli. I am delighted that we are able to join together, albeit virtually, for an event that is an important fixture and always highly anticipated in the university's calendar. I wish to extend very warm welcomes to you all on behalf of the university, home to the legacy of Inkosi Mvumbi Luthuli, a son of this province and a revered leader. We are delighted to be the host partner once again, even under these difficult circumstances. This year's theme, the 1995 World Conference on Women, whereto for South Africa and the rest of the African continent, speaks to the key values, policies, and practices of this institution, all of which promote the equal participation of women within the university and society at large. Our female staff and graduates feature prominently in platforms that promote women in all areas of poverty alleviation, research, women's rights, economic development, leadership, health, and a range of other arenas directly linked to the 1995 World Conference on Women. As a matter of routine, the university community is engaged in a great deal more than celebrating the accomplishments of its female staff and students. As a research and teaching institution, we are acutely aware of the vulnerabilities, disenfranchisements, and suffering still borne disproportionately by women both in South Africa and throughout the world. The impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have followed and deepened the contours of women's disadvantages, including reduced access to maternal health services and other essential services. In addition, the economic hardship due to COVID-19 is also greater for informal workers, the majority of whom are women. It is against this backdrop that we have embraced our obligation to play our part in advocating the rights and well-being of women through outreach and activation programs in the larger community. Closer to home, our proud institution put in place stringent measures to guarantee an enabling environment in which women continue to be enabled to study, work, and live without the fear of gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. To this end, we have developed and implemented a gender-based violence policy and strategy, a reporting protocol, and numerous awareness campaigns for our students and staff. We are aware that this is not enough because the scourge of gender-based violence is deeply embedded in our communities, and we need to be doing more. with you as our partners.
All right.
We are confident that the appropriate prevention, outreach, and awareness activities, communication strategies, and response mechanisms across all our colleges and campuses will maintain a safe academic and social environment for our women at our institution, and that our community outreach programs will also have an impact community-wise. At this juncture, it is of particular note that Inkosi Albert Luthuli, at the 1959 National Conference of the African National Congress's Women's League, urged the women to play their noble and heroic part in the liberation struggle. He noted that they were master tacticians and perfectly poised to increase their participation in the party's political aspirations. The women of this institution continue to honor this legacy, demonstrating time and again that they have what it takes to excel across the board when given the freedom, support, and safeguards. The University of KwaZulu-Natal cherishes the ideals of Inkosi Luthuli as far as the advancement of women is concerned, with our female graduates not only outnumbering their male peers, but only moving on to become award-winning leaders at all levels of society, in business, research, as well as the public and private sectors, locally, nationally, and globally. We welcome you, Madam Undersecretary, as a trailblazer and exemplar. Your outstanding achievements and professional engagement are as fine a testament to the spirit of the legendary Inkosi Mvumbi Luthuli as we could hope for. On that note, I want to thank you all, and we look forward to a good engagement with Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. And it's at this time in the program that we bring in the Honorable Minister Nathi Mthethwa. Minister, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. You may please begin your presentation.
Thank you very much, Program Director Desiree Chauke, the Luthuli family, former Deputy President of the Republic and the current UN Undersecretary, Director for Women, the chairperson of the Luthuli Museum Council, Baba Kabazela, important Mkhize, members of the council, the director of the Luthuli Museum, Mr. Kaba, members of Luthuli Foundation, Professor Nhlanhla Ukubela, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Head College of Humanities, members of the Council, the UKZN, members of Executive Management, UKZN, Renee Skuman, Commissioner on the Commission for Cultural, Religious and Language Rights, officials from the government, staff and students of UKZN, captains of industry, political, business, religious, traditional leaders, event sponsors and partners, the University of KwaZulu-Natal, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. I extend my warmest greetings to all of you present. I'm delighted that the Luthuli Museum Council and the executive have thought it appropriate to invite the Undersecretary of the United Nations Women, Director Ms. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, whom we also know her as the former president of this republic. For the second time in a row, the council has thought it wise and correct to invite a woman to speak and also to sustain a justifiable reorientation towards gender equality, which would have made President General of the African National Congress, Chief Albert Luthuli, smile. Program Director, you'll recall that the 13th memorial lecture was delivered by Samia Yaba Nkrumah, daughter of Ghana's first independence leader and the founding father of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. We also recall that in 2016, a memorial lecture was delivered by Dr. Brigalia Bam, former chairperson of the South African Independent Electoral Commission, who saw South Africa through many challenges of its democratic elections until her retirement. Chief Luthuli would also be smiling at the events currently happening beyond our borders. When the African National Congress President General, Chief Albert Luthuli, visited the United States in 1948, he was barred from entering a restaurant until his hosts intervened to alert the restaurant owner that he was an important leader from South Africa. Today, Chief Luthuli would be smiling because for the first time in the history of that country, on the 20th of January 2021, they will be inaugurating the first woman vice president and the first one of color, Vice President-elect, Ms. Kamala Harris. I'm referring to his smile because gender blindness was second nature to him. In his youth, he was open to performing household chores which were reserved for girl children. Among the other chores was to draw water from the river for his mother. These would show later in all his pursuit, where he worked his heart out, a dignity of labor he always respected. As the country embarks on the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children, we hope that South African men, all of us as men, in 2020 and beyond, will emulate this example of a man who did not separate household chores according to gender as a way of mending their ways, so that the violence that is perpetuated against women, justifiably referred to as the second pandemic after the devastating COVID-19, stops here and now. It is those chores which became his way of life in everything else. The invitation of such a high-profile global leader could therefore have not been extended at a better time than this. The timing is also supplemented by the appropriateness of the theme itself, a build-up of the 1995 groundbreaking conference on gender equality. The theme, the 1995 World Conference on Women, where to for South Africa and the rest of the African continent. This theme conscientizes us to the road we as a country and as a people have traveled towards accepting men and women as equal contributors to the future of South Africa, the continent, and the whole world. One aspect of Chief Luthuli's life, which have sent shock to the patriarchal system, was his acceptance to the role of women in public life and by extension in the struggle. Evidence particularly from interviews between Chief Luthuli's daughter, who's here with us today, Dr. Albert Luthuli, and other researchers exist of the equality of life within the Luthuli household. Both Umama Nokhanya Luthuli and daughters praised how their gender did not restrict them in the Luthuli household. Their education was gender equality, which was still a challenge to other nearby households where the role of women was restricted to the kitchen. For some households, school and education were not an option for girl child. As a chief of Groundville, Chief Luthuli's progressive approach to women's access to education rubbed off to abantu basemakholweni, over whom he was chief, and the Groundville community benefited greatly. Under Chief Luthuli's chieftaincy, Groundville produced its fair share of educated people, both men and women, no doubt a legacy that had been left on this small village by the likes of the chief himself and other eminent sons and daughters, such as isiZulu novelist Professor B.W. Vilakazi, the Mzonelis, the Gumedes, and many others whom I shall not mention due to time limitation. The Natal Inspector of Schools, Dr. Charles Templeman Loram, identified the young Chief Luthuli as worthy of bursary to study at Forte, at the time the only prime university for Black people on the continent. However, the young Chief Luthuli gave the much sought after opportunity a miss, preferring to start working to take care of his mother, who was advancing in age. A less caring individual would have grabbed the opportunity with both hands, but Chief Luthuli made a rational choice of prioritizing his mother than himself. According to Jill Kelly, in Gender, Shame and Efficacy of the Method of Struggle, 1959 Women's Rural Revolt, Chief Luthuli saw women as crucial for the influence they could have on the menfolk. He made a gender discourse part of the Congress movement's method of struggle. The chief rode on the women's challenges to masculinity, hoping that women would shame men into getting involved in the struggle. Professor Smangaliso Khumalo of the then University of Natal, Peter Maritzburg, noted that during Chief Luthuli's time, a protected space was created for women, close quote. The creation of space for women defied the patriarchy, but it was also positive because it led to the rise of women leaders such as Lillian Ngoyi, Dora Damana, Gertrude Chope, Albertina Sisulu, Gladys Smith, Hilda Bernstein, Kati White, Lillian Dederickx, and many other women leaders who led the struggle side by side with their men comrades. On women in struggle, Chief Luthuli had this to say, and I quote, "When the women begin to take an active part in the struggle, no power on earth can stop us from achieving freedom in our lifetime." The 1956 Women's March to the Union buildings was an epoch-defining moment. He fully supported the march. On the 21st of July, 1967, Chief Luthuli, on that day where he lost his life, the two young ladies, Mrs. Bonga and Papale, her cousin, ran to Chief Luthuli to greet him. They walked with him for a while until he released them from accompanying him. Always convinced of education, he told the two young ladies they should be educated, citing education as the biggest weapon with which to defeat the enemy. Even when he was a few minutes from the train accident which took his life, before the day had ended, he spoke of the importance of education, particularly to young women. His voice still reverberates today. His words to the two young women who were the last to see him call on all of us now that his party is in government, the African National Congress, to carry out his dream of creating conditions for women to access education. It is a dream we dare not forget. Program Director, I'm stating all this in my introductory remarks to emphasize that when a daughter of the soil, such as Ms. Mlambo-Ngcuka, is invited to deliver a lecture on this topic, it is appropriate because Chief Luthuli held women in high esteem and promoted their cause, advancement, and progress. Thank you for your attention.
Minister, thank you so much for reminding us of the urgency for the world to both acknowledge and support women leadership. We just want to remind our attendees and people watching on television that you're welcome to interact with us on social media or on the platform using the hashtag CALML2020 or hashtag Luthuli Legacy or hashtag Segwanele. I'm going to introduce the next speaker, and just to talk about context and how important it is for us to be having this conversation right now as we mark the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. Our keynote speaker today participated in the presidential dialogue on Friday on the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. So how appropriate, and we imagine that in her conversation, she will be including parts of the very important things she highlighted on that day about Generation Equality Forum and also the Unite by 2030. We imagine she will be touching on a bit of these. But let's bring on now the chairperson of the Luthuli Museum, who are our hosts today, Mr. Important Mkhize. You may make your presentation as you prepare to announce the keynote speaker. Mr. Mkhize, are you there? A bit of a delay. I'm gonna just wait to see if Mr. Mkhize joins us now to introduce.
Can you hear me, Desiree?
Perfectly, thank you. You may take the stand.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I would like to acknowledge the following. The Honorable Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Mr. Nathi Mthethwa, MEC for Finance, Ms. Nomsa Ncube, Keynote Speaker, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Under Secretary General and Executive Director, UN Women, Chairperson of Luthuli Foundation, Mr. Phumzile Luthuli, Dr. Albertina Luthuli and Luthuli family, Professor Lobogile Moletsane, JL Dube Chair for Rural Education, and all protocol observed. I think Ukabazele and Nyambose both have extended acknowledgement to the rest of the people. I can't repeat. Safe to say that all protocol observed. I would like to join the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture in welcoming our guest speaker on today's annual lecture of Inkosi, Chief Luthuli, which will be delivered by Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the Undersecretary and Executive Director for UN Women. Phumzile is no stranger in the South African political landscape, as she has served in the highest office in the land as a deputy president of the country. This year's theme of the 14th Inkosi Chief Albert Luthuli lecture is the 1995 World Conference on Women, where to for South Africa and the rest of the African continent. This lecture is taking place in a country when the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence on women and children has been launched. While a lot has been achieved in this country at the level of human rights, the gender issue in our country remains a thorn in the flesh, especially the scourge of femicide and infanticide, the rampant killing of women and children. This year's theme is relevant in the sense that it calls for the assessment, review, and evaluation of the resolutions reached in Beijing in 1995, the extent to which we have implemented them, and the shortcomings we have thus far encountered. The lecture, therefore, should be able to provoke discussions and conversations on how we should deal with the challenges we are encountering as a country. It is clear that through many of the pronouncements Ubaba Luthuli made on gender confirms him as a leader that was born pragmatic and both pragmatic and progressive when it comes to issues of gender. Therefore, this lecture is an honor to him in taking his ideas and ideals forward. Since this year's theme of the lecture is an international theme, the Luthuli Museum, therefore, prides itself for having made an appropriate choice by choosing the Undersecretary General and Executive Director for UN Women, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. This is an office which has a bird's eye view of what is happening at the international terrain insofar as the issues of gender are concerned. Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka joined the United Nations in 2013. She has devoted her life and career to issues of human rights, equality, and social justice. She has worked in government, civil society, and the private sector. She was actively involved in the struggle to end apartheid here in South Africa. From 2005 to 2008, she served as the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, overseeing programs to combat poverty and bring advantages of a growing economy to the poor, with particular focus on women. Prior to that, she served as Minister of Minerals and Energy from 1999 to 2005, and Deputy Minister in the Department of Trade and Industry from 1996 to 1999. She was a Member of Parliament from 1994 to 1996 as part of South Africa's first government. She is the founder of the Mlambo Foundation, which supports leadership and education. A long-time champion of women's rights, she is affiliated with several organizations devoted to education, women and empowerment, and gender equality. On that note, it is my honor to introduce and welcome Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka to deliver the 2020 Chief Albert Luthuli Memorial Lecture. I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Honorable Minister Nathi Mthethwa, Chairperson of the Luthuli Museum,